Back in 8th grade, there was this classroom everyone hated being in. Room A107. It wasn't haunted or anything like that, not officially anyway, but every student I knew said the same thing. Something about that room just felt off. It wasn't just the vibe either. Weird stuff actually happened in there. The lights would flicker all the time, even after maintenance fixed them. The clock on the wall was always wrong, no matter how many times they adjusted it. There was this cold draft in the corner by the supply closet that never went away, even in the middle of June. No one really talked about it out loud. Teachers just brushed it off. But students whispered things, like how a janitor quit after getting locked in overnight, or how once a substitute just left mid-class and never came back. That was the room I had science in. 4th period every day. My teacher, Mr. Hutchins, was old school, strict but not mean. He never acknowledged the weirdness. If the projector died mid-lesson or someone's phone glitched out in class, he just moved on without missing a beat. There was one kid who didn't seem to care about any of it. His name was Eli. Eli was one of those loners that no one really bothered. Not in a bullying way, he just kind of repelled attention. Always sat in the exact same seat, 2nd row from the back, dead center. Quiet kid, pale, heavy bags under his eyes like he never slept. I don't remember ever hearing him talk, but he never missed a single day, ever. And every time the weird stuff happened, the lights flickering, the power cutting, someone's pen exploding for no reason, Eli wouldn't even blink. It was like he expected it, or worse, like he caused it. I mostly ignored him until the last month of school, when things started escalating. It began small. My friend Jasmine told me she saw Eli writing in some weird-looking notebook during class. When she glanced at it, she said it wasn't in English or any language she recognized. She was freaked out, but figured maybe it was just doodles or something. But later that week, she started getting really sick, violently sick, in and out of the nurse's office, then gone for over a week. Then Brandon, another kid in our class, claimed he heard whispers coming from the supply closet during a lab. The closet was padlocked shut, like always, but he said it was like someone was on the other side, murmuring his name. Everyone laughed it off, said he was being dramatic. But a few days later, Brandon had a panic attack in class and had to be carried out by the nurse and a security guard. He never came back either. After that, everyone's attention turned to Eli. People said he was cursed, that he was doing something to us. I still didn't believe it. Not really. Until the last week of school. It was a Wednesday. I remember because we were supposed to present our science fair projects that day, and I was already stressed. But when I got to class, the mood was weird, tense. The lights were completely off, not flickering, just off. The windows were open, letting in this dim gray light even though it was noon. Mr. Hutchins wasn't there. Instead, there was a sub I'd never seen before. Some tall woman in an all-black pantsuit. No smile, no introduction. She didn't even take attendance. She just stood at the front of the room with her hands folded and told us we weren't doing presentations after all. Said we'd be observing a demonstration. Everyone kind of looked at each other, confused, but whatever. It was the end of the year. Weird stuff happens. Then she called Eli up to the front. He stood without saying anything, walked straight to the front of the class, and pulled that same notebook out of his backpack. The same one Jasmine told me about. He opened it and started reading. At first, it just sounded like gibberish. But the longer he went on, the heavier the room felt. The air got thick, heavy like it was pressing down on your shoulders. Some kids laughed, thinking it was a prank, but others just stared, eyes wide, not even blinking. I couldn't move. I couldn't even turn my head. It felt like something was filling the room, something big and ancient and wrong. Eli's voice didn't sound like a kid's voice anymore. It was deeper, layered, almost like someone was speaking through him. I remember smelling metal and dirt, like wet soil after a storm. Then the windows slammed shut all at once. The lights came on for a second, just a flash, and I swear to God I saw something standing in the corner by the supply closet. Tall, thin, impossibly long limbs, gone in a blink. Kids started screaming. A few tried to run to the door, but it wouldn't open. One girl threw a chair at the window and it bounced off like rubber. Through all of this, Eli just kept reading. The substitute never moved. Not once. Finally, Mr. Hutchins burst through the door, red in the face, shouting for everyone to stop. He ran up to Eli and grabbed the notebook out of his hands. The second he did, everything went still, like it had never happened. No sound, no flickering, just silence. Mr. Hutchins looked around, his face pale and sweaty, and told us all to go home. No explanation, no warning, just leave. We did. The next day, room A107 was locked. A sign on the door said it was closed for renovations, but no work was ever done. The windows stayed dark. No one was allowed in. We never saw Eli again. Rumor was he transferred. Some kids said he was expelled. Others claimed the school called in some private agency that handled things like this. But I don't think Eli was just a kid. And I don't think room A107 was just a classroom. I still have dreams about it sometimes. The way the air felt, the whispers, the smell. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear a soft knock on my bedroom door. Just one. Always one. I don't open it. I don't want to know what's on the other side. Someone left me a note in my locker. Now I wish I never opened it. I used to think anonymous notes were harmless, something out of a cheesy romance movie, but that all changed during my freshman year of high school. That was when I realized sometimes the quietest messages come from the darkest places. This all started in late October, a few weeks before Halloween. I was still adjusting to high school life, new schedule, new people, new building. It was overwhelming, but I managed to stay under the radar. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't picked on either. Just average. One Thursday afternoon, I opened my locker after last period and noticed something odd. A folded piece of paper sat on top of my books. At first, I assumed it was from one of my friends messing with me, but when I unfolded it, there was no name. Just 3 words written in red ink. I see you. Now I get it. At face value, it sounds like something a 7th grader would write to be funny. But something about the way it was written, neatly, centered, with small, perfect handwriting, rubbed me the wrong way. I looked around, expecting someone to be watching from down the hall, maybe waiting to laugh. But there was no one paying attention to me. Just the usual crowd of students shoving books in bags and rushing to catch their buses. I told myself to brush it off. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it wasn't even meant for me. But still, it sat in the back of my mind the whole evening. The next day, I found another note. Same red ink. Same handwriting. This one read, "You look tired today." That's when the unease really hit. Because I was tired that day. I'd barely slept the night before. My eyes were heavy all through math class. And now someone who didn't sign their name, was confirming they'd been watching me close enough to notice. I started checking my locker constantly, every passing period, before and after lunch. And for a while, nothing new showed up. I began to think maybe it was over. Then, about a week later, I got one more note. This time it was folded differently, smaller, tighter, and it said, "We're going to meet soon." I didn't tell anyone, not at first. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but I started walking home with friends more often and kept my head on a swivel. Every time I heard footsteps behind me or noticed someone staring for too long, my skin would crawl. My school had over 2,000 students. Figuring out who had access to my locker wasn't easy. But here's where things got weirder. When I brought it up to the assistant principal just to ask if anyone had reported weird locker activity, he looked confused. He said no one else had complained. And when he checked my locker logs, it turned out my locker hadn't been opened by anyone else, at least not officially. I had the only combination. That weekend, I stayed home, didn't go out, barely looked out the window. But on Sunday night, something happened that still haunts me. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of gravel crunching outside my window. My room was on the first floor. I froze in bed and listened. At first, I thought maybe it was just a cat or something, but then I heard it again. Slow, deliberate footsteps right outside. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and peeked through the blinds. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was someone standing on the lawn, not moving, not pacing, just standing. Their face was shadowed by a hoodie, but I could tell they were looking straight at my window, straight at me. I ducked back and crawled out into the hallway, heart pounding. I woke my parents, and my dad ran outside with a flashlight and a bat. But by the time he got there, the person was gone. We called the police, filed a report. They said it was probably a trespasser, maybe someone casing the house. But I knew better, because taped to the outside of my window, pressed right against the glass, was another note. Told you we'd meet soon. I didn't go to school for a few days after that. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. When I finally returned, I walked the halls like a ghost, constantly watching for anyone who looked familiar or suspicious, or who might be smirking like they knew something I didn't. Then one morning, the notes just stopped. No more messages in my locker. No one outside my window. Nothing. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, I let myself believe that maybe it had been some twisted prank. Maybe the person got bored or scared off. Maybe they were expelled. I never got an answer until graduation. At my school, we all received personalized envelopes with letters and messages from teachers, friends, and staff. It was a nice tradition, something to make the ceremony feel more personal. But inside my envelope, buried beneath the kind messages from my English teacher and my best friend, was one more folded paper. No envelope, no signature, just one final note. I still see you. That was 3 years ago. I've since moved out of state for college. New place, new people. But every now and then, when I check my mailbox or open a book I haven't touched in a while, I still find folded paper. Empty, blank, but perfectly centered, in that same handwriting. So now I sleep with my blinds shut tight, and every time I walk alone, I can't help but wonder if he's still there, watching, waiting, planning our next meeting. I don't usually get scared easily. I mean, I've watched all the horror movies, read the Reddit threads, listened to the podcasts, you name it. So when I say this story still keeps me up at night, I'm not exaggerating. This happened the week after graduation. My lease wasn't up yet, so I stayed a few extra days in my college town just to hang out, decompress, and honestly, party a little more before real life started. There were 4 of us still in town. Me, my roommate Eric, and our 2 close friends Danielle and Marcus. Our apartment was one of those old 3-story buildings just off campus, fading brick, creaky floors, radiators that barely worked. The place had character and we loved it, even if it was a little run down. We decided to do one last party before everyone split. Nothing big, just us, some drinks, music, that kind of thing. It started around 8 p.m., and by 11 we were pretty drunk. playing card games and talking about all the dumb stuff we did over the past 4 years. Around midnight, Danielle said she was tired and wanted to crash. We offered her the couch, but she said she'd rather sleep upstairs. We had a tiny guest room on the 3rd floor with a twin bed, so she grabbed a blanket and headed up. The rest of us stayed downstairs, half watching some old horror movie on TV, barely paying attention. Sometime around 1:30 a.m., I noticed Eric was gone. I figured he'd gone to the bathroom or maybe outside for a smoke. Marcus and I were in the middle of a conversation when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Eric. "Come upstairs, now." No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at it for a second and showed Marcus. He raised an eyebrow, shrugged, and got up with me. We both figured maybe he and Danielle were messing with us, trying to scare us or something. We climbed the stairs, still laughing, trying to guess what kind of dumb prank they were pulling. When we got to the 3rd floor, everything was silent. The hallway light was off, which was weird because we always left it on. I reached for the switch, flipped it up. Nothing. Bulb must have gone out. I turned on my phone flashlight. Eric was standing just outside the guest room, back against the wall, eyes wide. He didn't say a word, just pointed at the door. Marcus whispered, "What the hell's going on?" Eric leaned in and whispered, "Look in the window." The room was dark, but the blinds were halfway open. We crept forward, trying not to make any noise. Danielle was lying on the bed, back to the window, completely still. We assumed she was asleep, and then we saw it. A face in the window, watching her. It wasn't pressed against the glass or anything, it was just there. Eyes locked on her, not blinking. The guy wasn't moving either, just staring. I felt every hair on my body stand up. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor. No balcony, no fire escape, no ledge outside that window. It was a sheer brick wall all the way down. There was no way someone could be standing there. I took a step back and whispered, "Is that real?" Eric nodded. "I saw him 5 minutes ago. Thought it was my imagination until he didn't move." Danielle still hadn't moved. She must have been asleep with her back to him the whole time. Marcus pulled out his phone and started to dial 911, but Eric stopped him. "No. Listen." We went completely silent. There was this faint scraping sound, like nails on glass. The man's hand was slowly sliding down the window pane. That's when Danielle stirred. She shifted, still half asleep, and started to turn toward the window. Eric rushed in and yanked her off the bed just as she sat up. She screamed, totally confused, and we all backed into the hallway, slamming the door shut behind us. We didn't go back in. We ran downstairs and locked every door, every window. Danielle was hysterical. She had no idea what was going on. When we told her what we saw, she started crying and begged us to call the police. We did. And when they arrived, they didn't believe a word of it. They checked the backyard. Nothing. No ladder, no footprints. The window was too high up for anyone to have reached without climbing gear or scaffolding. They basically told us we were drunk, probably hallucinating, and should get some sleep. One of them even laughed, said we should write a screenplay. We didn't sleep that night. All 4 of us stayed in the living room, lights on, weapons in hand. I had a baseball bat. Marcus had a kitchen knife. Eric just held a frying pan. Danielle didn't say much. She just sat on the floor with her knees pulled up to her chest, rocking slightly. The sun finally came up. Nothing happened. No sign of the man in the window. We checked the outside wall again, just to be sure. Still nothing. That day, Danielle packed up and left. So did Marcus. Eric and I were supposed to move out the following week, but we left 2 days later. I don't know what we saw. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe it was some insane stunt pulled by a local lunatic. Maybe it was just a drunken hallucination shared by 3 people. But there's one thing I haven't told anyone, not even the others. The next day, after they all left, I went back upstairs one last time to grab a few boxes I'd left in the guest room. There were smudge marks on the window, long, greasy fingerprints, as if someone had been pressing their face and both hands against the glass for a long, long time. The smudges weren't on the outside, they were on the inside. To this day, I still have no explanation, but I haven't lived on the 3rd floor since, and I never will.